What if I told you that India's next political awakening might not come from some grand sweeping manifesto, but from a cockroach? I know, it sounds completely absurd. But today, we're unpacking the Cockroach Janta Party, or CJP. We're going to analyze the source material to see exactly how a lowly, unglamorous insect became a massive signal for the youth. We'll look at how this was born out of a mix of sharp satire and very real frustration, and try to answer the big question: is this just another internet joke, or could it actually be the blueprint for a modern political movement? Welcome to This Explainer. So think about this. What actually happens when a joke becomes the literal language of a generation? You see, in a system where traditional political speak often feels super rigid and, honestly, completely disconnected from everyday reality, Gen Z and digitally native youth have found a brand new way to say we have had enough. They aren't sitting around writing long academic ideological essays. Instead, they're weaponizing humor, anger, and this brilliant internet-native sarcasm to completely bypass the traditional gatekeepers. Because when ordinary politics feels like a closed door, well, satire becomes the emergency exit. To make sense of all this, we're going to break our journey down into 6 quick parts. 1. Birth of the cockroach. 2. The anger behind the meme. 3. Parody as political power. 4. From screens to the streets. 5. The state's reaction. And finally 6. Virality versus real reform. All right, let's jump right into Chapter 1, Birth of the Cockroach. The spark. So what was the actual spark here? It was a highly controversial remark attributed to the Chief Justice of India, Surya Kant, who reportedly referred to some unemployed youth and activists as cockroaches. Now, public figures did later come out claiming it was a misquotation or a misunderstanding, but as we all know, in modern political communication, perception outpaces clarification every single time. The damage was done. That specific phrase struck a very, very deep nerve. It took a massive systemic social problem, unemployment, and turned it into a moral insult. And taking a creature that is universally associated with disgust but also survival and persistence and turning it into a political identity, that was a stroke of absolute satirical genius for a group of people who felt totally pushed aside. And that is exactly how the youth responded. They created the Cockroach Janta Party. The name itself is a brilliant direct parody of the ruling party, but it carries this incredibly heavy emotional weight. By reclaiming an elite insult, they flipped the script and transformed it into a badge of survival. The message is crystal clear. If the establishment is going to see us as pests, fine, we will endure like pests. This kind of dark, ironic humor is basically tailor-made for a generation of digital natives. It lets them mock power while simultaneously building real solidarity among millions of people who feel humiliated. The joke literally became their weapon. Which brings us to Chapter 2, the anger behind the meme, the grievance. Look, it is incredibly easy to just brush off the CJP as mere internet comedy, right? Just another trending hashtag that's destined to fade in a week. But here's the thing. Satire only works at this massive scale when it's grounded in universal truth. This movement didn't come from nowhere. It grew in a climate defined by severe youth unemployment, extreme, crushing pressure to perform in competitive exams, devastating and repeated paper leaks, and this overarching heavy sense that institutions are just completely detached from ordinary people. For a young person looking for a job, these aren't just data points on a chart, they are daily humiliations. The CJP gave them a vocabulary that was funny on the surface, sure, but deeply, deeply serious underneath. It gave them a way to express their collective frustration without ever sounding helpless. Moving right along to Chapter 3, Parody as Political Power, How the Meme Spread. So how exactly does a niche inside joke turn into a massive nationwide phenomenon? Well, humor is frequently underestimated in politics, but it lowers the barrier to entry like literally nothing else. The rise of the CJP wasn't some slow, methodical burn. It was an absolute explosion. What started out as a satirical project on day 1 became this algorithm-friendly wildfire on platforms like Instagram and X within just a couple of days. By day 5, we are talking about mass youth reach and recognition. Why? Because it was visually distinctive and emotionally legible. It gave everyday people a way to critique authority instantly. No megaphone needed, no political rally to attend. Almost anyone will share a meme if it perfectly captures their daily struggle. And this one hit the nail on the head. And this exposes a really stark contrast. Think about traditional, old-school politics. It demands physical offices, dedicated cadres, printed posters, and these long, expensive campaigns, usually spoken in really stiff, ideological language. But the internet? The internet speaks in visual shorthand. New politics, as perfectly illustrated by the CJP, is driven by relatable grievances, irony, and the rapid-fire pace of algorithms. A really sharp symbol can now produce mass recognition in a fraction of the time it used to take the old guard. That takes us to Chapter 4, From Screens to the Streets, Manifestation. Now, the ultimate test of literally any digital movement is whether it can step out of the glow of the smartphone screen and actually survive in the real world. Can a meme manifest in a physical public space? Well, according to the source material, the answer was yes. Protests in Delhi proved this movement could gather actual bodies, not just digital impressions. They demanded visibility in the real city. And what's fascinating is that participants weren't just wearing cockroach masks. They reportedly carried the national flag, books, and placards demanding real accountability, education, and opportunity. This was the pivotal moment. This was where the movement attempted to shift from mere parody to concrete principle. They were essentially saying out loud, "We are in on the joke, but make no mistake, our demands are entirely serious." Let's look at Chapter 5 now, the state's reaction, power and ridicule. So, how does an establishment objectively respond when it's being mocked at scale by millions of young people? The short answer? With deep discomfort and suspicion. According to reports, platform restrictions were actually implemented, alongside active online monitoring and clear attempts to contain the movement's spread. Because let's be honest, power generally does not like to be ridiculed. Movements like the CJP reveal the fault lines in how modern institutions handle contagious, visual dissent. When satire becomes large enough to actually matter, it stops being treated like a joke, and it starts being treated like a threat. The modern state might tolerate traditional, formal criticism, sure, but it is far, far less comfortable when that criticism is youth-driven, highly contagious, and spreading like wildfire across social media. Finally, Chapter 6, Virality versus Real Reform. What comes next? Okay, so we've seen the origin, the anger, the viral spread, and the street protests. But here is the big analytical question. Can this energy actually translate into durable political power? Because there is a massive gap between a viral meme and real reform. A meme creates a storm in a week, right? But real power must survive the relentless, exhausting cycle of internet outrage. A meme focuses on humor, entertainment, and grabbing attention, whereas real reform requires ideology, principle, and sustained policy pressure. Organizationally speaking, the CJP right now is a fragmented digital performance. But actual political power, that requires built institutions and rigid structure. If the CJP actually wants to be a stepping stone for real reform, it faces 4 massive hurdles. Number 1, they have to establish clear, unified demands. Number 2, they need to build sustained leadership that can actually speak for the collective. Number 3, they must maintain internal discipline to avoid just fizzling out. And number 4, which is definitely the hardest of all, they have to convert that massive, buzzing online energy into actual, tangible policy pressure. Basically, they have to answer the most difficult question in protest politics today. What exactly comes after the meme? At the end of the day, the Cockroach Janta Party is absolutely a symptom of a generation that feels politically stranded and totally excluded. They have proven, without a doubt, that humor is a potent language of protest, and that even a lowly, unglamorous insect can become a massive rallying cry when people feel the system is deaf to their struggles. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. This story is still unfolding, and I want to leave you with this final thought. Are these digital protests the durable future of political change, or are they just the internet's latest performance?